Welcome to Love and Abuse, the show about helping you identify poisonous communication and toxic behavior. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. That's why it's important that you learn to pinpoint manipulative and controlling behavior so that you keep your power and your sanity. I'm your host, Paul Coliani. Welcome to another episode of Love and Abuse. If this is your first time, then welcome to the show. All the information on love and abuse is meant for educational purposes only. Always seek a professional for your mental health and well-being, and always pick your battles wisely. I think today is going to be a packed episode regarding guilt, and mainly the guilt that you might feel come up if you are considering leaving an emotionally abusive relationship. What I'm going to talk about today can apply to almost any relationship, romantic, platonic, family, friends. Romantic relationships might be at the forefront, mainly because those are the types of relationships that are probably the most difficult to part, or some people might say family is the most difficult to part or separate from. Wherever you experience guilt in your life is how this may apply to you. But I'm bringing this up because I think it's one of the most prevalent feelings that comes up for a lot of people when they're considering leaving an emotionally abusive relationship. And there are several reasons for it. In fact, I've written down 6 reasons. They're not all inclusive. There are more reasons out there, but 6 of the main reasons that come to mind that I'm going to address one at a time. And if you've thought about leaving a relationship, but the guilt comes up and you feel so guilty that you can't do it, and it prevents you from taking the right steps for you, then maybe this is the episode that you need to listen to. If you are considering it in the future, if you're having thoughts about leaving, or if guilt is just on your mind for one reason or another, again, maybe this is the right episode for you. So let me go over these 6 reasons that you may feel guilty if you're considering leaving an emotionally abusive person. The first one is you're a kind person that doesn't like to see people hurt. I'm not going to explain these too much because a lot of them are self-explanatory, but if you're a kind person, a supportive person, a generous person, a compassionate person, you probably don't like to see people hurting, and you probably don't want to be that person that hurts them. That might be how you feel or why you feel guilty. Even though you really aren't hurting them, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but that's the thought that probably comes to mind for people that feel this way, is that they think they're going to hurt the person they're with, and that by leaving, they are the inflictor of that pain. That's the first one. You're a kind person that doesn't like to see people hurt. The second reason you might feel guilty for leaving an emotionally abusive person is you are a conscientious person that is open to being wrong. Meaning, you think, maybe I have been doing bad behavior. Maybe they're right about me. Maybe everything they're saying has some validity to it. Therefore, because I'm conscientious, I'm open to being wrong, maybe that's true. And if that's true, boy, I would feel pretty bad about it. So that's number 2. You're a conscientious person that is open to being wrong. The number 3 reason that you might feel guilty for leaving an abuser is, and this is something I almost addressed already, you can't imagine inflicting pain or suffering on people that you care about. You just can't imagine you doing that. Like, number 1 is you're a kind person that doesn't like to see people hurt, so you have that personality characteristic. And number 3 is you can't imagine inflicting pain or suffering on people that you care about. And you think that by leaving them, you will be the inflictor of that pain. I don't even know if inflictor is a word, but we'll use that. You can't imagine being that person. So that's number 3. Number 4 is you believe you're the source of the other person's well-being. If you consider yourself the source of their happiness, the source of their strength, the source of their mental health and well-being, and you're about to leave them, you think you're taking all of that away from them. I'm sure that would make you feel guilty if that was your belief. So that's number 4. So the number 5 reason is you give people second chances, so it's not like you to give up on them. That's a tough one for a lot of people. You give people second chances, so it's not like you to give up on them. That's what it feels like. I'm not saying you should feel guilty because these are true. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying this is probably the reason that many people listening now might feel guilty. So if you're the type of person that gives second chances, and it's not like you to do that, you think you're giving up on the relationship, you're giving up on them, and that's just not like you. So guilt may seep in. The number 6 reason that you might feel guilty for even considering leaving an abusive person is that you believe there is good deep down in them, and you feel bad for not focusing on that. That's a pretty heavy one, and we're going to go over that. We're going to go over all of these right now, in fact. So I'm going to reread these to you one at a time and give you some thoughts for you to consider so that hopefully the guilt can dissipate. You shouldn't have to feel guilty for making a decision to take care of yourself and the other person, really. We're going to talk about this in a bit, but if you really need to get out of a situation that is harmful to you, it is almost always the best thing to do. If you are being harmed, it is almost always the best thing to get out of a situation where you're being harmed. And I think the bottom line in a lot of what I talk about is that people that love you don't want you to be harmed. That is a bottom line philosophy that I keep in my mind at all times when I'm talking to anyone or when I'm creating blogs or podcasts or anything like that. I'm always thinking that people who love you don't want you to be harmed. So that's why what I'm going to talk about is very important. It's very important so that you don't get stuck in guilt, because guilt is the ultimate showstopper, and emotionally abusive people know it. If an emotionally abusive person can make you feel guilty, they know they've got you. Kind, supportive, caring, generous people don't like to feel guilty, and when they think they did something wrong, they want to make it right. So what they do is try to make up for it by doing the opposite of what they're doing or something else, just to make up for that so that they can show other people that they're not the bad guy. They're not trying to do anything wrong or do anything harmful to the other person. But since the other person keeps their victim in guilt mode a lot of the times, the victim of emotional abuse stays focused on themselves instead of focusing on the harmful behavior coming from the other person. If you are spending most of your time focused on yourself and you feel guilty, then that's pretty much a submissive position that keeps you where you are. So I want to help you move from that place. And this episode isn't about convincing you to leave or even promoting that. That is your decision. You need to come up with that decision on your own, if that's even on the table for you. This is only about the guilt that comes up. Guilt should not be a part of any decision like this. Guilt is something that you clean up inside yourself and then move on. That's the simplest way to put it, and there's a lot of complexity in doing that. And that's why we're talking about this today. So let's start with number 1. Number 1 is you're a kind person that doesn't like to see people hurt. First, let me say this. Emotionally abusive people most often do behavior that originates from pain or fear. Their behaviors are underdeveloped or poorly developed coping mechanisms that may have worked when they were younger but no longer work in adult situations. So it's important for you to know that they're already hurt if they're doing these behaviors. If you're a kind person that doesn't like to see people hurt, which I imagine you are, emotionally abusive people are already hurt. And if they don't change that behavior, even after you tell them what they're doing is hurting you, then by you staying in a situation like this, you're actually a consistent stimulus or trigger that activates their poor coping mechanisms. That sounds a little bit convoluted, so let me kind of rephrase that. I'll put it into context of what we're talking about today. If you think leaving will hurt them, staying does too. Now, it's not because of something you did, but because anyone that they're in a relationship with will complete their circuit, so to speak. It's like putting a battery in a flashlight. If there's a battery, the light works. When you're in a relationship with an emotionally abusive person, you can be the battery that lights up their behavior. Again, this doesn't make you at fault for their behavior, but it's important to know that you are part of the equation. So if you feel guilty because you believe you're a kind person that doesn't like to see people hurting, remember that staying in a relationship where you complete this circuit, like a battery and a flashlight that helps to light the flashlight, that it doesn't matter if you stay or go because they're already hurt. There's nothing you can do that's going to make it better or worse. There's nothing that you can do to change that. It's just something you need to know so that you don't feel guilty about it. They're already hurt. I know it's sad to see someone we care about hurt, but you can't blame yourself for their hurt or their injuries. And when I think about the victim being part of the equation of emotional abuse, it's sort of like that thought experiment where a tree falls in the woods, and if no one's around to hear it, did it actually make a sound? And what that means to me is, can sound exist if there's no one around to hear it? And I look at emotional abuse the very same way. Can emotional abuse exist if another person isn't around to be a victim to it? And I'm being very careful. I'm treading very lightly here because I don't want to make it sound like it's your fault, your responsibility, and you attracted it. And it's nothing to do with that at all. It's anyone that's in this situation with somebody who's hurt and has poorly developed coping mechanisms. Anyone in their life is going to be the stimulus, is going to be the trigger for their behavior. Why I'm sharing this with you is because you don't have to feel guilty because you're a kind person that doesn't like to see people hurt, because you won't be the one hurting them. It's already happened. There's already something that they went through that they need to work on. And I don't want you to think that it's your fault that it's happening because you're just completing a circuit that you didn't even know was there. So that's the first reason you shouldn't feel guilty. I'm going to give you reasons you shouldn't feel guilty. I want you to get to a point where you feel good in yourself so that you're making decisions from a clear place, a place where the fog lifts and guilt isn't a determining factor in whatever you decide. The number two reason is you're a conscientious person that is open to being wrong. Like maybe I have been doing bad behavior. That might be something a conscientious person might think. Being conscientious about your own behavior and being open to being wrong is one of the most amazing qualities. If this is in you, never let it go. But also set limits for yourself. In other words, don't automatically believe everything you hear just because it comes from someone you love and maybe trust or trusted at one point. Consider the source of the information, because guilt that stems from being convinced that you are wrong about something can often go unchecked for way too long, especially when it's repeated over and over again. And I want to make sure that's burned into your mind. It's important to set a limit and don't automatically believe everything you hear just because it comes from someone you love and trust. And a lot of times the trust isn't there. You're questioning the trust, or you don't trust at all. Sometimes we base what we hear from someone like that on how we used to trust them. Like we think that they're telling us something truthful because they're trustworthy in other areas, or they used to be trustworthy, or what they said just made sense. But you have to be really careful, and you have to set the limit. And what I mean by setting limits is that you just have to choose not to trust certain things, especially things that put you down or make you feel bad, because that stuff destroys you. It eats away at you from the inside out. So let me give you a quick test that helps you determine if you should feel guilty. I look at the only way to validate if guilt should be felt is by looking at your intentions. I see intention as the qualifier for feeling guilty. Let me say that again. Intention is the qualifier for feeling guilty. What that means is if you intended to hurt or betray or be selfish, and I don't want you to confuse selfishness with self-love or self-compassion, and especially self-protection. If you intended to be hurtful or betraying or selfish, then maybe guilt has a place. But if it's not your intention to do any of those things, guilt doesn't have a place. And let me put that in context of today's episode. If you think that maybe they're right about you doing bad behavior, make sure that you are very, very clear about the specific behavior in question. So really get clear on what behavior you are feeling guilty about. Be real specific. I feel guilty because I did blank. Specifically, this is what I did blank. I called them up late, and when they told me not to call late, so that was my bad, so I feel guilty. That could be valid, maybe not. Maybe you had to call because it was an emergency or whatever it was, but be really clear on why you feel guilty. Don't make it a generalized guilt. In fact, cross generalized guilt off your list because generalized guilt should not exist. Guilt requires specificity. Guilt requires very specific things to feel guilty about. Guilt also requires intention. If you had the intention to be hurtful or betraying or selfish, that's when you can qualify guilt. And if it's not your intention to do any of those things, guilt doesn't have a place. Most of the time, the victim of emotional abuse has nothing but good intentions and wants to see the other person happy. And they'll usually go overboard trying to make sure that happens. If you felt responsible for something that they said you did for a long time and you feel guilty about it because you believed that you were doing bad behavior at the time, ask yourself if you were like this with other people as well, either in the past or now, and either romantic or other. And if not, did the behavior that you believe you did to make you feel guilty, did it start with this relationship? If it did, then likely it wasn't your intention. It's not your behavior that is causing the problem, because it points to the new element in your life, the new person in your life that has changed your life, or at least your thinking. It has changed the way you process things and the way you think about things and the way you feel about things. So remember that if you weren't being blamed for behaviors in the past, if you never had hurtful or nefarious intentions for other people that you cared about in the past, and suddenly you feel like you do, and it just started in the relationship that you're in, it's probably not you at all. Keep that in mind. We got a few more to go. Number 3. Number 3 is you can't imagine inflicting pain or suffering on the people you care about. This is also an amazing quality to have. If you can't imagine inflicting pain or suffering on other people that you care about or anyone at all, you're probably empathetic, you're probably compassionate, especially to those who you've let into your personal space. And because of that, you likely care more about them than most other people. And inflicting pain or suffering on them just makes you feel sick, like you would never do it. I remember when my wife left me, it was devastating. It was my whole world crashing down on me. And I believed that she was doing that to me. She was causing my pain. She was causing the relationship to end because she was taking the steps to end it. I believed she was at fault for not wanting to try harder and do more. The problem was that I was taking no personal responsibility for the damage that I'd done in the relationship. She had to leave. She had to protect herself. She had to make a hard decision to end the second marriage that she's ever been in, not because she didn't want to try. She had been trying since the first week we met. But this is where you have to set your limits. She had to determine her limit before she broke. And to what I just said earlier, she knew who she was before we met. And she wanted her old self back. And of course, she couldn't imagine inflicting any pain or suffering on me. So her limit wasn't about hurting me at all. She never once wanted to hurt me. And looking back, I could see that so clearly. She needed to protect herself. She needed to do what was right for her. When you are a caring, responsible adult, you try to do what's right for you and those around you. And when those people don't reciprocate, you have no choice but to focus on doing what's right for you, and they have to do what's right for them. When my wife left me, she had to do what was right for her, and I had to do what was right for me. I had to take care of me. I had to work on myself. I had to heal myself. I had to stop being the person I was. I had to change who I was. Because who I was being up to that point was the same person in every relationship that caused every relationship to fail. She had to do what was right for both of us by getting out of the situation. She was removing the battery from the flashlight. She was disconnecting the circuit so that I would have to work on myself and she could work on herself, heal what needs healing in her, and I had to heal what needed healing in me. But I looked back at her leaving and realized how wonderful a gift that was. It was a wonderful gift, and it wasn't a gift in the moment, because in the moment, it did feel like she was doing that to me. It felt like she was inflicting pain and suffering on me. And I was blameful toward her. I was making sure that she knew she was doing this to me. I only share this with you, and it's hard to share this with you because I'm just a different person now, but I tell you this because this is probably what you'll face. You will face somebody pointing at you saying, "You're causing this. Why don't you try harder? Let's work on this some more." My wife went through that for 7 years. She kept waiting for me to work on myself. She kept waiting for me to heal. She kept waiting for me to stop the bad behavior. And I never did. I was always pointing at her as being the cause for the problems in the relationship. And because of that, I never changed. The only thing that caused change in me was when she left, because it was the first time that I didn't have, I'm going to keep using this, batteries in my flashlight. It was the first time because I was using her as my source, my fuel, my energy, and everything about me was entwined or enmeshed with her, which is, it can be very dysfunctional. It was for us. It was very dysfunctional. And I take all the responsibility for what happened in that relationship. But at the time, I blamed it all on her. If she would change, if she would try harder, then we'd be happy. But that was a very toxic thing to push on her because there was nothing she was doing wrong. I was doing all the wrong things. But again, I'm telling you this because this is probably what you'll deal with, is the other person saying, "You need to try harder," or "Why don't you try harder? Why don't you give us a chance?" And she had given me every chance in the world. This is why it was time for her to leave. This is also why you need limits. I'm going to talk about limits in a moment, but this is why you need to tell yourself that enough is enough. I've done this for too long. I look at the trend line of our relationship. It's not going up and to the right. It's either steady or going down or having very big dips and coming back to steady, but rarely ever goes up. I'm unhappy more of the time than I am happy. That's a problem that needs to be addressed. And sometimes considering leaving or separating or staying away from each other for a while is a way to address it. So swinging it back to guilt, where you can't imagine inflicting pain or suffering on people that you care about, so you feel guilty about that. You don't inflict pain by honoring a consideration. If you're considering separating, if you're considering leaving, that's not inflicting pain. You do inflict pain by not having the freedom to choose. And no one should ever take that away from you. You need to give yourself the freedom to choose. Otherwise, you are inflicting pain to yourself. But you do not have to take responsibility for any pain that somebody else feels or blames you for, because that's not your responsibility. And let's get into number 4, which is a good segue for this. Number 4 is you believe you are the source of the other person's well-being. This one is all about codependence. If you stay with someone because you're acting as the source of their well-being and happiness, then you're feeding a dysfunctional machine that never gets better. It either stays the same or it disintegrates. That's that trend line of the relationship. Is it going up and to the right, getting better all the time? Is it steady and it's a good steady? Or is it going downward and you're just not happy? This is what you need to look at. Is this a dysfunctional machine that you keep inadvertently feeding? In my past, my partners in my life were always the source of my happiness. And it wasn't until my divorce where I finally realized that I kept getting into relationships to be happy. So instead of soul searching and looking inward and reflecting on my life and figuring things out, I just got into another relationship. Oh, I feel unhappy. Let's find another partner. This is what happens when you're the source of someone else's happiness. Again, we'll use the battery and the flashlight example. You being the battery will drain and lose all of your energy and passion for life because you cannot possibly be the source of anyone else's well-being. Well-being and happiness come from self-worth and self-esteem and self-care and self-everything to the point where you feel good and comfortable in your own skin, and you don't need a relationship to be happy. You just want one. I think that's a big difference. If you need a relationship to be happy, then there might be something inside you that needs addressing. But that's different from wanting a relationship to be happy. That doesn't mean you're necessarily unhappy. You just don't like being alone. You don't like being lonely. You want to share your experiences with somebody else. You want to share your life with somebody else. That makes sense. But if you or someone is doing that from a desperate place, a needy place, where you haven't worked on or healed what you need to heal inside yourself so that you can show up as the best version of yourself in the relationship, what ends up happening is that you become a complement to a dysfunction. There's a dysfunction in there where somebody fills a gap inside of you, but it's a dysfunctional one. It's a need that without them, that need isn't fulfilled, and then unhappiness arises. And that's kind of how I look at dysfunction. When a relationship helps to complement each other's dysfunction, then there can usually be happiness sometimes. But the problem is, when you aren't fulfilling a dysfunction, the happiness goes away. And that could mean a people pleaser that can't serve, for example, a taker. Like somebody is always taking and never gives back, never reciprocates. And the people pleaser keeps giving and trying to make them happy and giving more. And when they're not happy, they still give more. They are the battery that's draining. And the person that's the taker is the flashlight that keeps draining them and keeps getting brighter. And of course, they're never satisfied, so they want more energy from you, and they keep drawing that from you, and then you become drained. And when that happens, that is something I look at where dysfunctions aren't being met. It's all great in the beginning because the people pleaser might be able to please the taker, and because of that, there's a happiness among both of them. But when the taker wants more and the people pleaser is losing all their energy and can't possibly give anymore, that's when there's an imbalance and the dysfunction starts to drain the energy of the person giving and also the energy out of the relationship. And then pretty soon there's a disintegration of the relationship. So that can happen. So I look at a need, or more so a desperation, is what creates a dysfunctional relationship where one is desperate for a person to complete them, for example. And if they don't have another person to complete them, they will always feel incomplete. And because of that, when you meet someone who feels incomplete, they may rely on you so much that they need to control the relationship and you to make sure that you never leave them. That's when you're experiencing a poorly developed coping mechanism, like I mentioned earlier. When you don't heal what's inside you before getting into a relationship, or they don't heal from what's inside them before getting into a relationship with you, you try to seek comfort for that unhealed part of you from them. That's not always a dysfunctional thing, but it can be when the other person has a reliance on you, like a drug. Like when you're not around, they go into withdrawal. So someone who might be unhealed and needs to work on themselves, needs to reflect on what's going on in their life so they can get into the most functional relationship that is possible, If they have something unhealed that they use you to feel comfort and they use you as a coping mechanism, it's almost like using you like a drug. And when you're not around anymore, they go into withdrawal. I mean, the best example of this, again, is one of my previous relationships. I used to become jealous and I used to be lonely whenever my girlfriend went out with her friends or even her family. I would want to be with her. I would want to know where she went and when she was coming home. And that was a desperation or a neediness in me that I hadn't yet resolved. It was a fear of abandonment and a fear of rejection. I was always worried that I wasn't going to get enough, or I wasn't happy unless she was around. I was using her as my source of happiness. So if somebody treats you like a drug and they need to have you around, and if you're not around, they get lonely and they get frightened or they get jealous. If that happens and you feel like they need to have you around them all the time, then what ends up happening is if you take that drug away from them, if you remove yourself from them or separate from them, they may go into withdrawal, they may blame you, they may be upset, they may be sad, but it gives them a chance to heal because that drug isn't there anymore. Again, I'm saying some stuff here that makes it sound like it's your fault and if you weren't there, this wouldn't be a problem. That's not what I mean at all. The reason I'm telling you this is because I don't want you to have to feel guilty for any of this if you are considering leaving a relationship. Because we're all part of the equation of relationships. We're all in these relationships and we all play a part. We all play a role. And I'm not really referring to good and bad. I'm just referring to what a healthy relationship should probably look like. That's all I'm trying to lay out here. And to make sure that you're considering all of this just in case you are feeling guilty about whatever you're thinking about doing. We got 2 more. We're almost done. The number 5 reason you might feel guilty for considering leaving a relationship is that you give people second chances, so it's not like you to give up on them. I'm going to make this one really easy on you. Second chances means having 2 chances. If you give more than 2 chances, you don't have a limit. You haven't set the limit at second chances. What is your limit? This is the limit question again. What is your limit? If you feel guilty because you're the type of person that gives second chances and you feel like maybe you should give them another chance, you have to set your limit. You have to tell yourself what that limit is and you have to stick to it. If you want to give a 3rd chance, by all means do so. It's your prerogative, but set a number and stick to it. For example, if I catch them in a lie one more time, that's it. I'm leaving, or I'm living with my folks for a week, or whatever the accountability is. Set your limit and make them accountable. Otherwise, saying that you give second chances is pretty much a false statement. Because after the second chance, if you gave them a 3rd chance and a 4th chance and a 5th chance, then second chances is useless. If you don't set a number of chances and create accountability, then you really don't give people second chances. You give them endless chances. So if you feel guilty because you want to give them a 2nd or 3rd or a 4th chance, no problem. The guilt can exist, but only if you set the number of chances and stick with that number no matter what. That's a tough thing for a lot of people because that means taking action. Sometimes people are in situations where they share their hurt with the person who's hurting them. They speak their mind, they express themselves, they do everything they can to let the other person know how their behavior is affecting them, yet the behavior never changes, and the victim of the behavior never does anything to show that they won't tolerate it anymore. And this is tough. There are situations that are tough to get out of. You might be isolated. You might be in a relationship with a lot of commitments, and it's hard to break those commitments. Or where you're going to go, where you're going to get the money. There's all kinds of difficulties. I'm not saying that it's easy to do any of this. I'm just saying that if you're really going to tackle this and make sure that you're no longer a victim of abusive behavior, you do have to have limits and you do have to create accountability. And it has to be something that you know that they'll feel a loss for or from. And it's very difficult to say this, but sometimes your pain and suffering is not a loss to them. I hate to say that. In fact, I don't want to say that, but it's sometimes not a priority enough for them. It doesn't mean they don't love. It doesn't mean they don't care. I don't know. I don't know your situation, but I do see this happen a lot. In fact, it happened to me in my own life where I did not make her pain and suffering a priority over my wants and needs or neediness or desperation or dysfunction. I did not make any of that, any of her pain and suffering a priority when I should have. I should have done that. If I had done that, then I would have been in touch with my empathy, my sympathy, my compassion, but I was more focused on myself. And that's how I lost my relationships. That's what kept happening. I was so focused on myself instead of what it takes to love someone and care for them and support them. It was more about fulfilling my own needs and having a fear of rejection and abandonment and a fear that if they didn't do what I wanted them to do, that we would be unhappy. All of that came into the picture. And in every relationship I was in, they gave me second and third and fourth chances. They gave me so many chances that the chances became useless. It just became part of the routine. And this is why I'm sharing this with you. I don't want this to happen to you. I don't want you to give them so many chances that it's all routine and they're just waiting for it to blow over. If that's what's happening, if they're waiting for it to blow over, then second chances are useless. They don't mean anything. So if you give people second chances and it's not like you to give up on them, you don't have to feel guilty for that. I mean, you definitely can feel guilty if you do that, but now you know you need to set a limit and stick with that limit no matter what. And that means accountability, because as soon as you go over your number, your limit, and they keep doing it, you can't use this as an excuse or a philosophy in your life anymore. And that sounds heartless. I didn't mean to say it that way. I just mean when you are the type of person that gives people second chances, if you're not setting a limit and providing accountability, then it's not about second chances anymore. It's about endless chances. Second chances has a limit. And when you don't give yourself a limit, you really don't give second chances at all. You give a free pass. Some of this may be tough to swallow. Some of it, maybe you already know. Yeah, like I know that, but I can't do that. I totally get it. I'm just here to provide this for you in case any of it lands, in case you can use it for anything that you're thinking about, that you're dealing with. Again, the whole goal is so that you can get past or over any guilt that comes up, because guilt doesn't have a place unless you have the intention of hurting someone. And leaving someone isn't an intentional hurt on them. It's a decision that you need to make for you at minimum and for them as well. It's a decision that you have every right to make. And of course, breaking up or separating, it's never easy. It's never easy. And I don't think it's supposed to be. It's just something that we have to go through and figure out as we go. So let's get to the number 6 reason that you might feel guilty for considering leaving someone is that you believe there is good deep down in them and you feel bad for not focusing on that. So let me dispel a myth. The person that you're with today is the person they are. If you saw them as different and kinder and more compassionate before and more loving before, that was not who they were, or not only who they were. I mean, they can be all those things and they can be how they are acting today. They can be who they are and how they're acting today. What you see today is who they are. And that means that you can't try to pull out who they were, because who they were is exactly who they are today. They didn't suddenly become hurtful. They had it in them. That doesn't mean they're inherently bad. I was once that person, and I believed I was kind and supportive and a generous guy. That was in there, and it's still in there. But at one time, I was also hurtful. And that didn't come out until later in my relationships. But all of my qualities were always in there. All of our qualities are all in us. You have the capability to be kind and generous and supportive, and you also have the capability to be hurtful, betraying and lying and cheating and stealing. You have all these capabilities. And some people keep the negative qualities that they have about themselves hidden until it's time to pull them out to start controlling the relationship or the person in the relationship. And not everyone does it on purpose. Sometimes it's just in there, and as they get closer and more vulnerable with the person that they're with and they become more intimate, it gets closer and closer to those qualities that are in there, and they're more likely to come out. So there are two kinds of emotionally abusive people. I look at the conscious emotional abuser and the unconscious emotional abuser. The conscious one is vindictive. They're manipulative. They know they're doing it and they don't care. They're conscious about it. The unconscious one, the abusive behavior comes out and it stems from their poorly developed coping mechanisms, and they don't know how to handle maybe adult situations because they learned as a child how to deal with situations back then to survive. And I mean, this isn't the only reason people are emotionally abusive, but that's often what happens. And the dysfunctions kick in, the fear of abandonment, the fear of rejection, the fear of not being liked or loved, and there's also low self-worth and low self-esteem. All of this can play a role, and an emotionally abusive person can do bad behavior and not even realize they're being bad. They're just protecting themselves or acting what they think is normal and healthy when it's not, as you know. So I want you to ask yourself this question. If you knew all of those qualities were in there from the beginning, would you have continued the relationship with them? Really think about it. If you knew that not only the good stuff was in there, but all the bad stuff too, if you knew it was all in there, would you have a relationship with them? Thinking about way back when, either when you first met them or if they're family and you just started discovering the bad qualities about them, whatever it is, if you knew they had all the qualities, all of the above, good and bad, however you define that, would you have continued the relationship with them? Because if your answer is no, then when I tell you today that those qualities were always in them, what makes them any different now? I mean, if you could go back in time and you could see all those qualities in them and you tell yourself, no way, I would never have a relationship with a person like that. And then you come back to today and I tell you, okay, all those qualities exist. Then I would ask, would you have a relationship with that person today? And basically what I'm asking is, what is the difference between them now and them in the past? I know the answer is, well, I didn't see those qualities. But if you did back then, you might make a different decision. So that's why I ask, what is the difference between how you view them now, knowing the qualities are in there, and how you would have viewed them then if you knew the qualities were in them then? This isn't necessarily meant to be answered. This is just a little seed to have blossom inside you, and however it needs to blossom, it will. Now, your answer might say, well, we have a lot going on today. We have a history. We have commitments to each other. We have a lot of things tied up together. That absolutely makes it hard. That can make a huge difference, of course. But it has nothing to do with them being a good person deep down that's suddenly going to get better out of the blue. I mean, if they were always who they are being today and you couldn't see it either because they were hiding it in the past or you missed all the red flags back then, it still doesn't change the fact that deep down they are all of the above, not only the person that you know is in there. That sounds a little convoluted, what I'm saying, but it means that what you're looking for, only the positive, doesn't exist. If you're looking for the good, that part of them that's deep down there, that's positive, that doesn't exist. Not by itself. It all exists. That's what I'm trying to say. And because all of it's there, the good and the bad, the unhealthy and the healthy, the toxic and the non-toxic, the functional and the dysfunctional, you can stop trying to find what's good. That means you respond to who they are being today. Again, this is about not having to feel guilty for something that you don't have to feel guilty about. If you feel guilty because you believe there's good deep down there and you feel like you're not looking hard enough, well, you don't have to look anymore. It's not there because what you're seeing today is what was always there. I hope that makes sense. And this is tough because I know some emotionally abusive people listen to the show and many of them want to change. They want to be kind and supportive and they want to stop their behavior. So I don't come on here picking on anyone. I'm just letting you know if you're affected by emotional abuse, you're allowed to respond to how you're being treated in the moment. And to the emotionally abusive person, that means that your past doesn't protect you, and neither does your future. If the person you care about sees you for who you are today, not a victim of your past, not a victim to poor coping skills, not a victim at all, but a perpetrator of bad behavior, then don't be surprised when you do something hurtful that they respond to it by either lashing out or being protective. So that was a message to the emotionally abusive person out there, is that I am encouraging the people affected by your behavior to respond to your behavior, not to your past, not to who they believe is inside you, deep down inside, not to anything that you've been a victim of, which you may be a victim to the bad behavior of someone else from your past, and not to someone that you have a potential to become. I want anyone that's affected by emotionally abusive behavior to react to the behavior that's happening to them today, not to their past, not to their future, only to what is present right now. Because I endorse the self-protective route. I think sometimes the only way to get a message across to a hurtful person is by the other person responding to their behavior by honoring themselves. And honoring themselves could mean the accountability piece that I was talking about earlier. They separate for a while, they break up with you, they divorce you, whatever it takes to show the abuser that their behavior is unacceptable. And it has nothing to do with your past, nothing to do with your future. It has to do with how you're treating them right now in this moment. That's the specificity piece. That's the part where you get really specific and you say something like, the way you're treating me now, what you're doing right now is hurtful. That hurts me. And they may say, well, what you do has hurt me too. And you've probably heard me talk about this before. If they say, well, what you do hurts me too, then you can say, okay, we can talk about that, but let's talk about this first. Well, I want to talk about this because you're hurting me too. Okay, let's talk about it now, but we get to talk about what I'm experiencing too. This is a fair game. We can go through it. We can talk about it. Let's just have a real conversation on it. But it has to be addressed. It has to be specific, and it has to be resolved, at least put on the table, because you need to be able to say your piece about the specific behavior that is hurting you. And sometimes that's hard. Sometimes it's hard to figure out what behavior is hurtful and what behavior is causing you to feel the way you feel. That's sometimes the tough part about emotionally abusive behavior, is that you can't always tell exactly what behavior it is. That's why I create the workbook. I tell you about it at the end of every show. It pinpoints the behavior so that you can put it on the table to talk about it, or you can validate what's going on so that you can make a decision from a clear place. And let me just say this. There is good deep down in everyone, but there is also everything else that you see today. And you aren't going to be able to pull out only the good. You really have to leave it up to them to work on themselves so they can heal and show up as the person that you hope they'll be. And any guilt that you may feel about this may be because you think the good part of them is being injured in some way. And the reality is, it's not an injury. It's a message. I mean, if you decide to leave, you're giving the good part of them a message that that part is the part you want to be with, not the hurtful part. Let me say that again because it's so important. If you decide to leave or thinking about leaving, don't consider that a hurtful act toward them. What you're doing is sending a message to the good part of them that is telling them that the good part is the one you want to be with, not the hurtful part. You're sending a message to the good part. And that message is a gift to who they really are deep down inside, not an injury. And quite frankly, in some relationships, you do have to give the other person a gift of your absence. Not because I want people to split up and feel all the pain associated with that, but because of the simple formula that makes a long-lasting, sustaining relationship. And that formula is something I always go by. It's one of my root philosophies in how I live and everything I teach, is that you always support the other person's path to happiness. When someone supports your choices to honor yourself and do what makes you happy, and you do the same for them, emotional abuse doesn't exist. It slips in every now and then, but that's normal. It's part of growing together. But if you are always supporting their path, their decisions, and they're supporting your path and your decisions, That's how intimacy grows. That's how the bond is strengthened. And that's what I consider a loving relationship. The problem with emotionally abusive relationships is that quite often there's one person doing that and the other is not. So I hope some couples are listening. I hope that both sides hear this and realize that if I just made that my root philosophy, support the other person's path to happiness, support whatever makes them happy, support their decisions, support their goals, support their dreams, support their passions, then maybe all the relationship issues you have could resolve. It just depends on how far it's gotten, how bad it's gotten, and how much damage has been done. So that might take some extra effort and might need a lot of healing inside. And I also realize there are times where you have to talk things out. You know, the other person's path to happiness might be spending your life savings, and you probably want to talk that out before you just make a decision to support. It's not all about just giving away the farm and hoping they do right. And you still have to talk. You still have an equal partnership. But in the end, if your philosophy is, hey, I just want them to be happy, I think that's a great way to look at things and a great way to create closeness and intimacy and the longest lasting relationship that you could possibly create. And all I want for you is to realize that 90% of what you might feel guilty about, you probably don't really have to feel guilty about at all. And I realize that's easier said than done, but I hope some of the things I've said today help. Share this with others that might benefit. Love and Abuse is the official podcast of the Mean Workbook, an assessment and healing guide for difficult relationships. The workbook provides an evaluation of your relationship based on a 200-point assessment and is geared toward romantic relationships, but many have used it to determine if family or others in their life are being manipulative or emotionally abusive as well. If you're in a difficult relationship and you'd like to pinpoint the unhealthy behaviors causing you to leave so many interactions feeling bad, let the workbook help you discover the specific components of bad behavior and put into words what you're experiencing. Get the tools you need to help you reach clarity. Visit loveandabuse.com for more information. And before I end the show today, I also want to mention healedbeing.com. This is something I've been working on for several months. It is a thorough email course for the emotionally abusive person that wants to change. I realize there are just not too many tools out there for people that are doing hurtful behavior and don't want to, or have realized it, or have discovered it, or have been told that they're doing it, and they're just now trying to figure out what to do next. And I keep getting messages saying, thank you for this. This is exactly what I've been looking for, because there's just not too many resources out there. So I created a resource. It's an email course, or I'll send you an email every few days with very specific tips and processes and exercises that will help the emotional abuser who wants to change start healing and start not only treating the people in their life better, but treating themselves better, and also get rid of the burden of the need to feel controlling or manipulative or any of those things that really can destroy a relationship. So I've got that available over at healedbeing.com. That's 2 words, healedbeing.com. So if you're working on changing behaviors that you don't like about yourself, head over there and see if that's right for you. This show exists to remind you that you are not alone and you're not going crazy. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. You deserve honesty and sincerity. You deserve to be treated as worthy and significant, because you are. Thanks for joining me today. We'll talk again soon.